Hey, good morning, y'all. Josh of Severe Weather. Happy Thursday to you. I know you're getting ready for a big weekend. Many of you are traveling. I want to address the weather at hand here in the southeast that unfortunately does not look great. And those of you who are regulars, thank you so much for tuning in. I apologize I couldn't be with you the last couple of days. I am trying to get caught up on sleep. It's a very busy time of year for me for what I do in my day job, traveling and visiting with customers and potential customers. But I very much appreciate being able to do this when I can. It brings me joy. It allows me to share my thoughts with you, and I cannot do it without you. And I know this time of year is a little bit slower when it comes to viewers. People are traveling. We're past winter. We're not yet really into hurricane season, and severe weather has been kind of in a lull overall. So I'm not discouraged by that, but if you could, I would very much appreciate it if you could share this with some of your friends. Let's try to bring some new people in and let them know what's going to happen with the weather. I very much would appreciate that. So I'm going to share my screen and let's get to what's coming this weekend. And unfortunately, not looking great here for this Memorial Day weekend. Across the Carolinas, across the southeastern coast of the U.S. A very slow moving storm system is going to crank up there is a little bit of tropical development potential, but really this is truly not a tropical feature. Could it get there? I'd say the chances are pretty low. But whether or not this thing gets a name, which Arlene would be the first name on the list, it is still going to be a nasty storm. And I'm going to break down the rain, the wind, the temperatures that were expected, and how it's going to impact you. And the good news in the Northeast is that we are seeing a slower pattern than a few days ago where you're going to get to enjoy a pretty decent weekend, cooler than average weather, but a good deal of sunshine as this storm takes its time drifting northwestward. Next week, we will have more impacts when you get up into the Mason-Dixon line and up into the Northeast by Monday and especially Tuesday and on. But for the time being, this is going to be a southeaster is what we call it. Here's a look at the water vapor image. You can see this trough cutting down into the Tennessee Valley, into Mississippi and Alabama. It's going to cut off into an upper level low pressure system and draw moisture up the southeast coast slowly. You see there's a lot of dry air here. There's another trough moving down through the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes region. That's going to suppress this upper low and keep it trapped in between storm systems. It's not going to move much at all. And the Carolinas pain is going to be the Northeast gain because of that. It's going to kind of just get stuck down here. We do have some pretty active weather in parts of the southern plains, New Mexico, West Texas, southeast Colorado. That pattern continues to be pretty active. Same goes for Montana and Wyoming. We're kind of stuck between two systems here, but there's enough instability for our diurnal storms. Diurnal meaning kind of, towards the evening hours, towards the late afternoon, evening with the heating of the day. And a cooler pattern here in California heading into the weekend. We do have a trough moving through, not very active in California, but something we're going to be watching here. And from pivotalweather.com, I'm going to show you the upper level pattern, and you're going to see what we call a Rex block, the Greek letter Rex, where you've got high pressure aloft building into Ontario and Quebec, as well as the upper Great Lakes. We have low pressure aloft and upper level lows stuck here across the southeast. And we do have troughs that kind of ride up and over this ridge. So as we progress into the weekend, what's going to happen is we see troughs dropping into the west, but they don't get to plow into the southern plains and bring a lot of severe weather. And the reason why is you've got this ridge that's blocking the progress, and you've got this upper low stuck here. It's going to continue to spin and then finally move away next Tuesday into Wednesday. But what's going to happen is we're going to continue to see that pattern where troughs move into the west and then a ridge builds here westward into the upper Midwest. So it's going to warm up here. But down below in the southeast, we continue to see an active weather pattern. So a very wet pattern shaping up, cooler than average as you continue to see these upper level lows. This would point to more active weather across parts of the southwest and especially Texas and Oklahoma. Following in about a week or so. Also, you see this trough digging through the northeast. It's going to bring cooler air back down into eastern Canada and the northeast. So we don't truly get to warm up anytime soon over the next 5 days. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. Now, looking at tropical development, we do see a pretty significant amount of wind shear out of the west-southwest as this trough builds in. So the upper low is going to allow surface low to form off the southeast coast, which typically speaking, this time of the year can mean some tropical mischief. However, when you have this kind of wind shear out of the west, 40 to 50 knots, it's going to be very difficult to get something to really go to town here and form quickly and circulate into a strengthening storm system. So hurricane is off the table at this point. Tropical storm probably off the table. Subtropical storm, what that means is the core of the storm starts to take on tropical characteristics, but it's kind of a hybrid. You still have cool air in place aloft. You don't get that true tropical core. That is a little bit more likely, but not a super high chance. And so the Storm Prediction Center, or I'm sorry, the National Hurricane Center does give us a 10% chance of something subtropical forming. It's not going to happen through Friday night or Saturday morning. We're probably looking at Sunday if something does try to form, and it's quite possible that this low moves inland, then goes back out Monday and Tuesday, maybe has a better chance at that point. Regardless, it doesn't change the weather that we're going to have, whether or not it tries to get a name. If it gets a name, fine. I mean, we've actually already had one subtropical storm in January. This would be number 2. But at this point, regardless, we're dealing with a lot of rain. We're dealing with some nasty weather at the coast. From weatherbell.com, the GFS model shows how this storm is going to evolve. So we start seeing rain moving into the low country of South Carolina and towards the Cape Fear region tomorrow, and especially tomorrow night. And it could get kind of heavy here as well Friday night, especially Saturday morning. That rain evolves northward and northwestward. The upper low is going to take that moisture inland all the way into the mountains, and Sunday is looking really ugly across North Carolina, even parts of southern Virginia, southwestern Virginia, northeast Tennessee, even southeastern Kentucky. And for Memorial Day, we see rain getting up to about the Mason-Dixon line. It's going to be pretty light up in Maryland, West Virginia, and southern Ohio. The heavier amounts will stay south of the Blue Ridge here, but we do have a lot of rain potential, and this moisture continues to slap parts of South Florida as well with heavy amounts of rain. West Palm Beach area, for example, the GFS shows 4 inches of rain. So it is, everything is slow to evolve. The rain is not going to be in any hurry to leave. It's going to be slow to come in, slow to leave. And it's a great weekend to stay indoors, unfortunately, here in the Carolinas. The European model kind of follows the same beat as the GFS. It does not bring the moisture as far north. Excuse me. Doesn't bring it as far north. For example, the Ohio River stays relatively dry here into Tuesday. Southern West Virginia gets wet. Southeast Kentucky gets pretty wet, an inch or so of rain. But it keeps the heaviest rain over the Carolinas and far southeastern Virginia. So that's the European. The Canadian model, the GEM, is kind of in line with the GFS here and the European. It's kind of in the middle of the two, where it does bring some light rain up into western Maryland and even some light rain into the Philly area here by Monday evening, but keeps the heavy stuff south of the Ohio River. So it's kind of a mix between the two. It does have heavy rain in South Florida. See this 2-inch amount here in West Palm Beach, but really the heaviest rain is confined to both the Carolina coast, but also northwestern North Carolina and up into the Grayson Highlands of Virginia. So this could be pretty nasty. We also have a second area that's forced by the upper level low. We got a lot of moisture moving through places like La Follette and into far southwestern parts of Virginia, and then sneaking up towards Hazard, Kentucky. The Icon model, this is the German model. It's not always the best one to use, but you can see it really takes that moisture northward all the way up into the Pittsburgh, Johnstown, Altoona areas. It's got kind of a bit of a streamer here, but again, most of the rain, Huntington and Charleston on southward. Lesser amounts than the other models over East Tennessee and Western North Carolina. Do I think this model is right? No, but I'm going to show it to you guys. I mean, I really find it hard to believe that Wilmington and Myrtle Beach get less than an inch of rain. So forget the GFS. We're going to close that tab out. How does that sound? The NAM shorter term mesoscale model. This one only goes out 60 hours, but it is a doozy here across North Carolina. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more, but what it does is it shows low pressure stalled and draws a huge area of moisture up to, I don't think this is right, but 3 feet of rain somewhere off the coast from the Carolinas in the Gulf Stream. But I more want to show you guys just kind of how things evolve here into Saturday morning over East Tennessee, eastern, into the PD Valley or region here, and all the way up to the Cape Fear as well. Really has a lot of rain. And looking more closely here at pivotalweather.com, rain totals from the NAM are impressive in North Carolina. 5 inches in the Wilmington area. It'll be less in Leland, about 3 inches. Cape Fear, Southport, 5 to 6 inches. But look at Pender County. This is a giant cluster, you know what. Potentially from the NAM, 13 inches of rain. We saw this last Friday farther west in parts of New Hanover and Brunswick, especially Brunswick County. We saw some places picking up a very heavy amount of rain, and the NAM is showing a similar setup a little bit farther northeast, Pender County here, but Hampstead, if a foot of rain falls, it's going to be a big time problem. So this is just the next 60 hours. A lot of this is going to be on Friday and Friday night and continuing into Saturday morning. So it just sucks if you're planning to go to the beach on Saturday. I'm not going to lie. I mean, there's no sugarcoating this. Is this model going to be right? Not necessarily. If you go back one model run, it doesn't look quite the same. Now, of course, this model doesn't go as far out, but you can see, even just going back one model run, it's got the heavier amounts down across New Hanover County versus Pender. So we're going to watch it for certain here and be prepared for more changes. Farther south in South Carolina, same model of the NAM. You can see the heavy rain. Myrtle Beach, Horry County, 2 to 3 inches of rain. Higher amounts in North Myrtle, for example, and then right up to Calabash and Shallotte. The amounts climb the farther north and east you get. But Charleston and much of Charleston County, Allendale, those areas do not get the heaviest rain. What happens is the low comes up a little bit more to your east, more into Georgetown and Horry counties, and that brings us the heavier rain to the northeastern part of the state. Columbia, the Midlands, we'll see, half inch, maybe an inch of rain through Saturday morning. There could be more into Sunday, but you follow up I-77 and it's just going to be a steadier, lighter type flavor of rain here for Friday night and Saturday morning. And then you get farther west towards the CSRA and towards the Savannah River, and amounts do drop off quite a bit. I do want to show you South Florida as well, or just Florida in general here, because on the tail end of this storm system, we see a northeasterly fetch of moisture. Now, this model does not keep it as wet in Palm Beach, but there could be locally heavier amounts. I mean, you can see southern Palm Beach County, northern Broward, maybe 5 inches of rain. Some parts of the interior southwestern part of Florida could see 4 to 5 inches of rain. So again, it's going to be which neighborhood gets hit with a heavier storm, but somebody does see that. And then the fetch of the heavier moisture actually is around Daytona. You had a very wet day in Daytona yesterday, record rain for the date for May 24th. Could be the same here on the 25th. And then getting farther south into, I believe this is Brevard County, I believe. 4 to 5 inches of rain near Melbourne and Palm Bay. So not everybody gets doused, but those who do get the rain could see a lot of rain. So keep that in mind. Winds are also going to be an issue here. Whether or not this becomes tropical, we're still going to see some gusty winds starting to move in this afternoon onto the South Carolina coast. Gusts could get to 35 miles per hour overnight tonight in Myrtle, even 33 in Florence and up the Cape Fear River Valley. But tomorrow is where the winds really start ramping up, 40 to 45 mile an hour gusts with a chilly rain falling. So it really looks pretty nasty here. And then tomorrow night, depending on how this storm evolves, the NAM, of course, could be developing it too strongly, but has gusts over 50 miles per hour in Horry County here around Myrtle Beach, 57 around midnight tomorrow night, 45 in Florence. These are potential maximum wind gusts. It's not going to cause widespread wind damage, but it's going to make for some nasty weather and nasty surf here, maybe a little bit of coastal flooding as well before we see things kind of shifting off to the north and east on Saturday. So Friday and Friday night is going to be your worst time frame in South Carolina. In North Carolina, that gets delayed. We do see some gusty winds near the coastline here later on today into tonight. Gusts could get close to 40 miles per hour in places like Southport and on Bald Head Island. As we get into tomorrow, those winds do start to ramp up on the coast, but they come down a little bit in the coastal plain before, or not coastal plain, but the eastern Piedmont before they come up here on Saturday morning. And if the NAM is right, winds may gust in excess of 45 miles per hour from Fayetteville all the way up to Asheboro, Greensboro, and into the Grayson Highlands. Your higher elevations could see gusts over 50 with a cold rain falling here on Saturday. So be prepared for that. Again, not going to be a great beach day. I do want to show you the moisture profile. This is the dew point, how much moisture is in the air. It's been very dry, but you can see things start moistening up some at the coastline today and tonight. But look how dry it is in Florence and Fayetteville. Dew points in the upper 30s tomorrow morning. So it's not going to be a washout first thing. That air is way too dry. But notice how quickly those numbers do start climbing here. But if a storm is going to form, when you've got this boundary here where dew points drop off in Charleston from near 60 down into the lower 50s, this does not have the look of a tropical system. It may try to be subtropical, but when dew points are in the 40s here, and temperatures are pretty low, that is not a profile for a tropical system. So I don't think it becomes a tropical storm. Could it become subtropical? Well, we do have that feed coming in where dew points do climb into the low 70s here in the Cape Fear region. So this is a very interesting profile where dew points are in the 30s in Boone and Ashe County, but they're climbing on the coast here into the 60s and even low 70s. So, something subtropical certainly could occur here, but it's going to be pretty cool here. I mean, this is the end of May, and we're talking dew points in the 30s and 40s. That's just pretty much unreal. Your surface temperatures, these are going to be very interesting to track. Georgia's going to see some pretty comfy weather, but as we get into Friday here at the coast, we are probably not getting out of the lower 60s in Myrtle, Georgetown, Pawleys Island, Charleston, even down to Savannah. We're stuck in the 60s here in May throughout the day, and then dropping into the 50s tomorrow night, maybe even upper 40s according to the NAM as this cold air comes down. I mean, how often do you see Memorial Day weekend temperatures in the 40s in places like Manning and Florence and Rock Hill and Lancaster, South Carolina? Just very unusual to see that. But look how quickly they warm up. So Myrtle Beach goes from the low 50s tomorrow night. As that moisture moves in and it's raining, we could be in the mid 70s. So mid 70s in Myrtle, mid 50s, maybe even lower 50s in Charleston Saturday morning. Quite the contrast here. And we'll see these kind of contrasts farther north as well. This is Saturday morning, and notice the entire western half of North Carolina until you get west of the Blue Ridge is in the 40s. I'm just going to pause and let that sink in for you. Even up in the mountains, 34 degrees on Mount Rogers, midday Saturday. I like to hike. I've gone up to this area several times, the Grayson Highlands. It ain't going to be pretty here late May, and we're in the 30s for half of the day. I mean, give me a break. So if we do get a name storm down here, it ain't going to be tropical, that's for sure. But it's going to be nasty regardless. So be prepared for these drastic temperature drops. You're going to be running the heat in places like Boone and Todd, North Carolina, Johnson City even. Hey, Jesse, if you're watching. 48 in Asheville, Brevard, 47, 48. I mean, 49. This is an extreme run from the NAM, but it certainly ain't pretty. So severe weather chances aren't super high, but eastern New Mexico, West Texas, the next couple of days, even Montana, the best chance for severe weather is tomorrow, but the same area gets highlighted and then potential drops off. I should really say predictability drops off. There will be severe weather, but models, until they agree 4, 5, 6 days out, aren't going to give us enough of a feel for what's going to happen. Now let's take a look at the longer term, and this is the ensemble showing the Pacific, and you can see storm system after storm system dropping into California here. So this is great if you like severe weather in the western and especially the interior west and the south central plains. We see troughs moving in here constantly. All the heat is up over the Arctic and over north central Canada. This is quite a difference from what we saw last week. In the United States, here's what this means. The southeast is going to get stuck here with just a really lousy weather pattern. As this upper low moves out on Tuesday, another one replaces it in the central and eastern Gulf region. Keep an eye on the Northeast Gulf. Maybe something tries to form if a boundary gets down here and wind shear relaxes. But look at the Northeast. We go from a beautiful setup here where high pressure is in place over Quebec and New England early next week. That leads to a dry pattern. And then this trough actually backs it on up here into the eastern U.S. by next weekend. That's going to cool things down quite a bit and lead to a more unsettled weather pattern. And that trough sticks around here. And what I'm going to be watching for you guys is actually this typhoon in the Pacific, a recurve possible. And when typhoons recurve, they get set up into the jet stream where they bring bigger dips. And that could mean more active weather heading into the plains here around the 10th or so of June, and also continued shots of cool air across the eastern United States, delaying the onset of real summer here. So that typhoon could have a big play, and it could have a big impact on how things play out here heading into June. Look how cool the southern United States is. Really, there's not a lot of heat until you get up into Canada and Montana, and it just continues to stay cool here. The ensemble's showing a very cool pattern into the second, third week of June, so not great if you're planning on going to the beaches, except maybe Florida. Finally, as we get to the second half of June, temperatures start moderating. The averages still come up. Here are our longest days of the year. And we also see the departures from average coming up. So it will start getting warmer later in June, but the first half of the month is likely going to remain below average for many folks here in the southern and eastern United States, with the exception perhaps of Florida. So I mentioned the tropics. This is Super Typhoon Mawar. I did mention that Guam got hit. Fortunately, not as bad as it could have been. If you see here at the very last second, Our Typhoon Mawar actually weakened just a touch. It had a little bit of dry air get into it. The eye wall recycled, and it also made a bit of a right turn. And your prayers have worked, as Guam, while it did get hit hard, there was flooding in Guam, still is some flooding. The strongest of winds managed to escape just to the north. Now, over the last 24 hours, we have seen things really get nasty here with one of our strongest typhoons on record in the month of May. Maybe it even is our strongest in the month of May. That's annoying. But you can see the current path continues to take it through very warm waters as a super typhoon. This is a 175 mile per hour beast of a storm. Here's Luzon in the Philippines. Here's Taiwan, and both are in the cone of uncertainty. But overall, the models do show it trying to cut up between the Philippine Sea and the East China Sea. And maybe that's more of an issue for the Okinawa island chain. Here's a look at the satellite. I'm going to set this into motion. Here's Guam. This is this time yesterday morning. And I apologize if Zoom sucks here. But you can see the eye wall degraded a little bit as it made the approach towards Guam. That is great news for Guam. Still a powerful storm, but this little fluctuation definitely spared the island the worst. Now, after it gets past Guam here yesterday afternoon and last night, our time in the east, you can see the eye does clear out. The storm starts growing again, and overnight we saw rapid intensification, where now we've got this massive eye, just a really beautiful satellite presence here, and a very dangerous storm. And this is Category 5. This is worse than what Michael was. This is basically Dorian. This is what some of the classic typhoons of the Western Pacific have been. The pressure likely down to about 910 millibars. The record, I think, is 880 from Typhoon Tip. Correct me if I'm wrong. But for the month of May, this is almost unheard of to see a storm this big. So a very incredible storm out there. And the forecast track takes it up very close to Taiwan and very close to the islands here of Iwo Jima, far southwest Japan. What'll probably happen is it'll recurve, but we don't know exactly where that's going to happen. A couple models take it to near Taiwan and then recurve it. Others make a hard right and actually miss Iwo Jima and actually come up east of Japan. It'll be weakening at that point. The H-Wharf model takes the storm system as a 911 millibar powerful beast here overnight and does start to slowly weaken the storm. It'll still be at least a Category 4 and then maybe a Category 3 by the time it potentially gets to Iwo Jima here on Sunday. And then you can see the recurve and the weakening. But as the storm recurves, that is going to energize the jet stream. That's going to allow colder than average weather back into the eastern U.S. For the first 10, 15 days of June. And it could lead to a very unsettled weather pattern as well. So stay tuned on that. But yes, this does have an impact on our weather down the stretch here in the next couple of weeks. Thank you so much for your time today. I want to give all the glory to God who allows me to do this. I'm a Christian man. It is my calling to do this. In my opinion, and in many believers' opinions, while science and faith kind of clash, the Lord put me here to be a scientist, to study his creation. And I believe he put other people to do the same. So as the earth was created, so was mankind, and mankind has been given the gift of God to study the earth and study science. And I believe that is my gift. That is my fruit here. And I wanted to just read from Colossians 5:22. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control, which is the last one's the one I really struggle with. But I work as a scientist. I work in a sales career, and self-control is what you have to have. And believe it or not, putting my faith in God gives me the freedom to take all the pressure off of me and give all of that to God, give him all the glory, because through Jesus Christ, I've been redeemed, giving God, telling my Lord what my challenges are and letting him deal with it rather than, so basically telling my challenges how big God is. That's what I meant to say. It's been a long week. I'm sorry. Allows me to continue on what I do every day, and then those blessings come in left and right. This channel has been a huge blessing in the 6 months that I've done it. I've gotten to connect with people I never would have gotten to connect with before. If you're watching, you know who you are, and I'm praying for you. Sales coming in. I mean, some of my sales cycles are 2-3 years, but they pay the bills. It's a blessing just to know that the work you're putting in eventually pays off. And if you're like me and you are not to your goals on a lot of things, whether it be your health, your finances, where your family stays, um, just know that you are still working towards it, and those fruits of the spirit are there. We have a generous God, and if you're generous, He will repay you in many ways. Staying faithful as well, staying gentle towards people who you may not agree with, but still just giving them the benefit of the doubt, even knowing that you're true to yourself. And if you're a Christian, you're true to Jesus Christ. Kindness, being nice to people, not understanding necessarily what they are going through. We are all going through crap, but being kind to people, being patient, that's a huge one for me that I'm still working on. Having peace, love, and joy, and loving others just as God has loved us. I just wanted to share that with you because it is powerful. And I have to remind myself every day if I have a bad day, just knowing that while I'm facing challenges, my God is bigger than those challenges. And I hope He is for you as well. So thank you so much for your time. Prayers go out to all that have been impacted by this typhoon, and I apologize for the weather this weekend. Can't really do anything about it, but just make the best of it. And also, I'm not going to say Happy Memorial Day. It is a time of sadness for those who have lost loved ones in combat. But my thoughts and prayers are with everybody who's in that situation. As a veteran, I know many who have lost their lives, and those of you who are doing the Murph this weekend, I'm praying for you as well because that is beyond me. But wow. Okay. Thank you so much for your time today. We'll have a video again in the morning. God bless you. Talk to you then.